4-month-long investigation into their mysterious disappearance ended in mid-November when hunters accidentally discovered the skeletal remains of Sally Ann in a remote pasture south of Twin Buttes Reservoir.
We were out at Twin Buttes with Nick Hanna and Deputy Terry Lowe. We have driven with them from town, which was about a 20-minute drive.
It was about this time of year, so you can imagine the mesquite trees and the cactus would be about the same condition now as it was then.
Again, this is kind of like a scrubby, lots of mesquite, thorny trees, patches of dirt, middle of nowhere kind of scene. But there were some things they found there that, in addition to the bodies.
This is a hat pin, which is a Stetson hat pin that was found placed on top of a limb on top of Shane's skeleton.
Really weird, really strange. The investigators don't know the significance for sure. We'll report on some possible links to something that it may be involved with in future episodes. But, the fact that this is just brush piled on the bodies in a haphazard way, to have this one little item kind of laying toward the side but on top of a piece of brush after all those months is just really weird.
We don't have the things in this case that would normally solve a crime, as I mentioned before. We don't have fingerprints, we don't have a crime scene, we don't have a bloody handprint. All we have is skeletal remains of 2 teenagers that had been out in the elements for a considerable length of time before they were found.
So we're in the sheriff's office, and Terry took us down to look at this. So this, again, it really hit me as, wow, this is real.
Well, these are Shane's pants.
And one thing I really remember is the smell. Like, it was very musty and it smelled like dirt, and it really kind of struck me how old it is and how these are their clothes. Like, this is what is left, basically. It was really very strange.
One of the things that's mentioned in the case file is that Shane had a butterfly knife, and I was never able to, we didn't have it. So I asked Marshall one day, I said, in Shane's stuff, you don't happen to have a butterfly knife? He said, I don't know, I'll look. Well, the butterfly knife was in the stuff that he had that belonged to Shane. But it's usually Shane kept it in his car. So anyway, it did have blood on it. And once again, we got excited, and once again, it was no go on the DNA. So,
whose blood was it? Was it Shane's? Or it just hasn't matched?
No match. Shane's boots. When I was first going over this evidence, I found a hair with a follicle right here on the boot. So I got all excited, and we sent it to the lab, and it came back as a human hair. We got even more excited. So they'd send it for DNA. Nothing.
I have always said, like, what about DNA? There's new technology. We look at all this stuff you have. You have the knife, you have the hair on the boot, the clothes. And we will go into this towards the end of the podcast of why that has proven so difficult. And it's been hard to really pull anything that they can get conclusive evidence from.
We do know they have the Shane and Sally's DNA, but it's an interesting question. They had Sally's from the ME.
Right.
For some reason, they didn't get Shane's, so they went back and exhumed his body to get his DNA.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But the end point is they have their DNA.
In interviewing Terry Lowe and really getting into his investigation, I felt like they have a lot of evidence that just stopped.
This knife was actually belonged to Shane, and was found at a pawn shop afterwards. Unfortunately, what I don't have is who pawned it. And of course, that pawn shop doesn't exist anymore.
I've been very impressed with, like, you go down the rabbit holes, you follow this trail to this trail to this trail. So one
Yeah.
reason I really wanted to bring you in is the investigative stuff that, like, I don't know how to do that, but you do. And it drove me crazy how many times I'd go, that's how it is. That's the answer.
Yeah, but a word of caution on all that, because, you know, as they remind us all the time, this isn't, even though it's a cold case, even though
Right.
35 years, 36
Right.
is some, this is an active investigation. We're going to decide what to tell you and what to give you, which is
And there's
fine.
stuff they're not telling us, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get the sense, Lowe's kind of a contradiction, because he came along in 2013, was assigned to this case, and he did a ton. I mean, he interviewed so many more people. He digitized all the case files eventually. So he was really invested in it. But I get that feeling too, where you come across something like, well, what happened with that lead and why wasn't it followed? And so you don't know if that contradiction is because he's actually not following the leads, or if they're just not telling us something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Valid point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the way they handle the body is a reflection of their attitude at the time, and part of the crime itself. And so to leave it in such a manner where it can be exposed to the elements, I think it's a further disrespect to the person and to their memory, and you're depriving the person's family from the normal burial process or healing and things that we do in our culture.
Starting in episode 4, we start concentrating on closer looks at the suspects,
Hello? Is your name Steve Schaefer?
with a lot of detail about why the police are looking at them.